As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and the Great Recession may be over as the new jobs report came out and actually had some good information about Americans going back to work. And of course, from the Christian and biblical worldview, work is a very good thing. So I'm going to be talking about that more with my special guest, Dave Arnott, who is the Christian Economist. But before that, I want to show you a clip that is talking about the substance of the jobs report, so that you can hear that, understand it, and then we're going to talk about it. So listen to this.
All right, let's talk about, what we can parse in terms of where the economy is. We got a big jobs report on Friday. Numbers were a bit disappointing. Let's put this up on the screen. The payrolls rose by 209,000 in June. That was less than expected. The headline from CNBC says, as job growth wobbles. The total, while still solid, they say, from a historical perspective, marked a considerable drop from May's downwardly revised total of 306,000. So May had been initially calculated as higher. They since revised it down to 306. And it was the slowest month for job creation since payrolls fell by 268,000 back in December 2020. The unemployment rate, though, did decline by 0.1 percentage point. They also took a look at wage numbers. They said they were a little bit stronger than expected. Average hourly earnings increased by 0.4% for the month and 4.4% from a year ago. The average work week also increased a little bit. Another thing they take a look at here is the labor force participation rate. So what percent of, people who could be in the workforce actually are in the workforce. That apparently held steady, still below its pre-COVID pandemic level, but for workers who are in what is considered their prime, to use some Don Lemon language here, between 25 and 54 years of age, that actually rose. So more workers participating in their prime years. And you have some indications here that, it's a little tepid, it's a little bit wobbly, and it also indicates that you probably wasn't poor enough of a report, though, to change what the Fed is planning, which is to continue hiking rates.
Right. All right. So joining me now is Dr. Dave Arnott, who is the Christian Economist, and you can find him online. He also hosts a great podcast. So, Dr. Arnott, first of all, what is your view as an economist of the current jobs report and this trajectory basically saying that people are actually going back to work?
Yeah, there's two pieces of data that have come out this week that are really quite encouraging. The labor participation rate is now in the mid-63s. It had been in the mid-62s, and it looks like it has mostly recovered from the pandemic. Now, in the Christian worldview, we think work is important. And so there still is some lagging concern because it has been trending down for 20 to 40 years. That is a problem, but it looks like we've overcome the COVID pandemic part of it, and people are going back to work. It really was quite a concern there for a while that people had just given up on work and they weren't going to do it anymore. I wrote a book with Sergei Seidamatov called Biblical Economic Policy. And one of our 10 commandments or economic commandments from the Bible is work is good. So this week we are encouraged. We wish the number would get higher, but it's in the mid 62s now. It had been in the mid 63% before the pandemic.
Yeah, and that's such a great point that work is good and work is important. And, we all tend to think about as Americans, what's the best economic philosophy in terms of capitalism, in terms of consumerism and profit. And none of those are bad things inherently, obviously. The Bible does talk about the love of money being the root of all evil and greed and, some of those things. But in terms of actual work, it's not just a capitalist philosophy that Christians in particular should be concerned about, and Americans, if we genuinely want a moral and upright society. It's this underlying philosophy that we see that the Bible speaks to work and vocation and making a profit, taking care of our families, taking care of ourselves as a good thing, and actually reflecting the person, nature, and character of God. And so, as we're looking at how the Biden administration has treated this and a lot of these, the differences between Democrats and Republicans generally when it comes to work work and government handouts and so forth. How should Christians be thinking about work from a more fundamental perspective than just, yay, capitalism?
Yeah, Abraham Kuyper was 100 years ago, was a Dutch theologian, professor. He actually was prime minister. And he has this concept of sphere sovereignty. Sorry to use a big term here, but what he essentially meant was that different entities are assigned by God for different things to do. And while he had more of them, today let me limit it only to the family, the church, business, and government. And it is quite clear that where we are today is the government is doing many things that God intended for families and churches to do. Now, I'm not ready to argue how we got here. I'm just stating that clearly government is doing many things like trying to take care of the poor. The church is supposed to take care of widows and orphans. I mean, and it's very clear how they're supposed to do that. So as government gets bigger, God gets smaller. That's a phrase you've probably heard before. In economics, this is absolutely true. And so there are many things that the government is trying to do. Now, what they did over the pandemic, of course, the Democrats are being slow in releasing those gifts, so to speak, to people. And that's one reason people haven't gone back to work as much as we wish they would. Sorry, a small example here. I'm in a Walmart the other day, and the lady's checking out in front of me seemed to know the checker. And she mentioned, I don't work because I don't have to. Jenna, that's not in our worldview. You work because, in the Calvinist idea anyway, you're hand in glove with God doing his work. God is seen as working instantly in Genesis, and we are assigned to work. And so now we're going through, Jenna, you asked this good question about the political array that's going on. And we clearly have the Democrats who are saying, let the government take care of you. And the Republicans in generally saying, no, they're supposed to take care of themselves. And this is more in line with Kuyper's idea.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. And I think that we need to, as conservatives, reorient our view toward what work is and why work is good, not just to make profit, which obviously profit is part of that because we need to sustain ourselves and our lives, and we need to provide for ourselves and our families. But this idea that work is truly ministry. I mean, there's nothing in the holistic view of the Christian life that isn't ordained by God and should be used in a manner that benefits ultimately God himself. And in terms of work, we should be thinking of our vocations and our calling in terms of service to the Lord. And I think there's such a secular sacred divide here that a lot of people see ministry as this very narrowly cabined vocation in terms of pastors, church leaders, maybe some Christian counselors, a few other ancillary vocations, but they tend to think of, I'm going to my job and then I'll go and do ministry in the church or in my family, maybe if they even extend their worldview that far, rather than thinking, what has God given to me in terms of my own skills and talents that he has provided me with that I can use for his service. And the Bible doesn't speak at all of retirement. I mean, the Bible does speak of making sure we are providing for ourselves. And to your point in your example about, this woman in Walmart, okay, maybe she doesn't have to work to make a profit and she's blessed in that way, but then that should mean she is free to do completely full-time ministry. And, one of the things I love about my work now, and even when I was practicing law more full-time, was that everything that I'm doing, well, yes, I have to earn a paycheck and that's fine. I'm doing this for ultimately the service of the Lord and promoting truth in society and being a minister of the gospel to my clients, maybe more narrowly, to my family, certainly, but then also in media more broadly, to the wider body of Christ and also civil society. So I think you're right, Dr. Arnott, that we tend to abdicate as Christians the role of being God's hand and feet in civil society to the government. And the government is so ill-equipped to actually dispense any sort of ministerial function to society, especially that would deal with heart issues as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, John Calvin's key scripture was Colossians 3:23, which says, whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord. Or actually, sometimes I'll shorten it. I'll say, whatever you do, work. And I'll just stop there. But he said, the Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work as unto the Lord, because your work is more than just the physical part you see. It's the spiritual part that you see. And so we're encouraged to work from that point of view. I've often said, if you love your neighbor, you'll provide her products and services she demands. If you love yourself, you'll make a profit while doing so. So an almost, or a mostly, I should say, free market capitalist system provides that and gives us the freedom to work and serve others and make a profit at the same time.
Yeah. And so what would you say then to people who are maybe listening to this and say, well, that's great, but, my vocation has nothing to do with being able to speak the Christian worldview. And I just, maybe I'm an engineer, or a doctor, or a plumber, or, a garbage man, or, any of these types of vocations or jobs that aren't necessarily immediately understood as being inherently Christian.
Well, they are missing the viewpoint then, aren't they, that we've been talking about. There's a legend that St. Francis was weeding his garden and someone interrupted him to say, if this was the last day of your life, what would you be doing? And he hesitated just long enough to say, weeding my garden. See, it's the beauty of the secular world brought sacred by weeding his garden. And in doing so, he was producing more fruit. He was making a better world. And that's what we do. We all do. Plumbers do that. Electricians do that. You did that as a lawyer. And when we feel like that it's the hand and glove of God and humans working together, then we don't have this secular sacred divide that you and I have been talking about.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. And that's where I hope that most people are encouraged by that, to say that, it's not just that they have to begrudgingly go to work, 9 to 5 and have to pay the man and, all of those things. And we see this constantly on social media, like, oh, it's Monday. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's great. It's Monday. I get to actually, go and do what God has ordained and allowed me to do with the gifts and talents that he's given me. And, and I think for people, if you really don't like your job that much, then maybe you need to think, is this genuinely my calling and my vocation? And vocation to me is where your ability to earn intersects with something that you love in ministry. And that is your calling and your vocation. And, for me, loving the philosophy of law from a very young age and seeing how that intersects with the truth of the Christian worldview and how I can advance the truth of the gospel, not just in media, but, with clients, that was readily apparent to me because of how my parents discipled and raised me. I was homeschooled all the way through to understand a comprehensive biblical worldview. And so I hope people are encouraged by that and also self-reflect to say, am I working because I understand that I'm doing this for the glory of God, or am I doing this begrudgingly and just doing this because I think that I have to, and I'm posting all these memes on social media like I hate my job, I hate Mondays, and all of these things. And so from a more 30,000 foot perspective as well, what's your advice on Americans looking at our economy from a Christian worldview perspective, and maybe their own independent finances, and how the Christian should relate to our economic system in capitalism.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. The word vocation comes from a Latin term vocare, which means a calling, and we are called. See, private property is really important in the Christian worldview. The eighth commandment says, don't steal. That assumes private property. And without lawyers to defend private property, people wouldn't work and produce because they wouldn't be able to keep it. And so that's hard for some people to understand, that without a legal system that honors private property, we wouldn't work, because why would you work if something could be taken from you? And it's lawyers who defend that. Now, there are a couple of data points I'd like to get to this week, if it's okay with you, about the current state of the economy, because things have changed this week. I mean, we've had two data points that are really quite important. Unemployment went from 3.7 to 3.6. That's a very good move for the poor, because now they can raise the wage of the poor, whom we Christians care about. It also means that when the Fed meets on July 25th, they'll make an announcement noon, July 26th. They probably are going to raise the interest rate from a range of 5 to 5.25 to 5.25 to 5.5. This will further tamp down inflation. So that's my third data point today, if that's okay. We had really good inflation news just yesterday. We think it's gone from about 4 down to 3. Now the Fed's target is 2. They still have some distance to go. And again, being concerned about the poor, food inflation is still 5.7. That is really bad news. But we've had two good data points this week, and the economy looks like it's better. The Fed has been saying they wanted to make this smooth landing. Well, I've been saying working people should be wearing a hard hat, because they're going to land this economy right on top of the working poor. This week, it looks better, Jenna. It really does. And I think we should be encouraged that the Fed may have pulled this out, much the way the National League scored 2 in the top of the 8th last night
Yeah.
to win the All-Star game. I would have told you last week that these Fed guys are the group who can't shoot straight. This week, it looks much better. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong, because this is better for the economy. It's better for the poor. Things look good.
Yeah, and that's so well said, and I think that gives a lot of people hope as well, because we've been in kind of a bleak state, looking not only at the current state of the economy, but even what economists like yourself have predicted moving forward. So maybe this is a little bit of good news. And one of the things that you also mentioned is about how the Bible presumes private property rights, and we see that in the Eighth Commandment and elsewhere in Scripture about private property, and this notion that even we render unto gods what is God's, and Caesar's what is Caesar's, and we have this understanding that a man earns his wages and he deserves them, and all of these things that fit into the Christian worldview, not only of work and earning, but private property. And I always think it's so fascinating, just from a constitutional perspective as well, that when our Declaration of Independence, one of the chief drafters, of course, Thomas Jefferson, was so concerned about private property rights, and coming from common law England, and how there would be titles of nobility and the real property that would have to go according to bloodline, not this free alienability of property that he wanted and really advocated for in American society. When he used that term, our rights are unalienable in the Declaration. I love that, because it means our rights that God gives us can't be bought, sold, or abridged or infringed at whim. And our American property law that you mentioned is so important, that we have real property lawyers. And one of the hallmarks of American property law is that if you have a will, a living will, for example, you and your spouse to your kids, the law specifically contemplates that your children or whoever your heir is, at the time that you're still living, are only heirs apparent, because the law contemplates there might be future children born of the marriage that could be co-inheritors. And it's always fascinated me, in the midst of our discussion about life and pro-life advocacy, that the American law, the same law that contemplates that not even yet conceived unborn children have property rights, but yet we think that not even yet conceived children and then currently conceived children until they're born don't have a right to life. Yeah. Thomas Jefferson would have laughed at that, and our founders would never have subscribed to this proposition that we can use children as commodities and just freely abridge the most sacred of all rights, which is the right to life. So, all of this comes down to the philosophy of understanding law and economics and politics from a Christian worldview. And so go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's a question of where do your rights come from? We assume if they were inalienable, they can't be taken away from us. They had to be given by a greater power. Whereas many people today assume in the secular viewpoint that rights are given by government. But if they're given by government, they can be taken away by government. I've said so many, I'm called the Christian Economist. I've said so many times, the intersection of Christianity and economics is freedom. And that's what you've been talking about, Jenna. This freedom, these inalienable rights, the freedom to barter, to buy and sell, the freedom to produce the Jenna Ellis show, it is your property. You own it, right? And so these assumptions come to us as Americans so easy, but we need to be aware. I was at a family wedding recently where there are a lot of military people. And so I said my common phrase to them, thank you for your service to our country, because freedom is not free. And one of them said back to me, the economy is not free either. We have to defend it. And he thanked me for defending the free economy, because in a fallen world, we could lose our political freedom. We could also lose our economic freedom.
That's such a great point. And we've certainly seen that with cancel culture, like, my good friend Mike Lindell, who's been canceled from so many banks and his company from big box stores just because the leftists don't prefer his Christian worldview. And this entire notion as well that government could potentially have things like social credit scores, like a central bank digital currency. I mean, all of these things that threaten genuinely our economic freedom and liberty and our ability to make choices for ourselves and our family and truly do what our founders also termed as the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration, to make those decisions for ourselves and our family without the government infringing or telling us that we have to. I mean, the government didn't tell me that I had to become a lawyer or that I couldn't become a lawyer. The government isn't telling me what I have to speak or what I can't speak on my own show. And so freedom is the ability to do what we ought. And it's not just freedom to do what we want, because there certainly are restraints and criminal law and other things. But I think this whole conversation is so important because people do need to realize that genuine freedom and liberty is founded on a Christian worldview, because if our rights only come from government or even from man's collective whim, whether that's a king and a petty tyrant or a collective body or 51% majority, then that's still coming from a source other than God. And it's either your rights are going to come from man or they're going to come from God. There's no other source. And if man gets to determine where our rights begin and where they end, then we are in serious trouble. So closing thoughts from you, Dave, and I so appreciate your time. And this is such an important conversation.
So my closing is things are better this week than even I thought they were last week. Predictions are difficult, especially those about the future. That little quip is sometimes attributed to Mark Twain, but it was actually said by a Danish physicist named Niels Bohr. Predictions are difficult, especially those about the future. I would say today our economy looks better. I had predicted a recession like many economists had. Well, we had growth of 2% in the first quarter. It was just revised the other day. Estimates as of yesterday is that the second quarter growth will be 2.3. I think God has redeemed this. Jenna, there's so many times in life when we make mistakes and we goof up. This particular one, the inflation was caused by fiscal policy, spending too much money. Then the Fed in monetary policy had to clean up the mess. I didn't think they would. I'm wrong this time. God has redeemed this situation. It looks like the economy will recover without a recession. Ask me back next week and I'll give you my other opinion about the future. But today we have a lot to be happy for. And in the Christian worldview, what was done wrong by humans was redeemed by God.
Amen to that. Well, thanks so much. And where can people find you and your podcast for more on the Christian Economist?
Thanks, Jenna. I'm called the Christian Economist. So just search for those 3 words on YouTube or on any URL. My name is Dave Arnott. But if you search for the Christian Economist, podcast number 181 came out today. I do a podcast every week, and there are many of the subjects that you've been talking about today.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on 181 episodes. I know that takes a lot of work since I produce 4 new episodes a week. So, it does take a lot of work, but this information and these conversations are so incredibly important. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you, and God's blessings to you.
Yep. Let's continue the conversation. Bye.
Sounds good. Thanks. Have you ever picked up a towel set because it felt so soft in the store, but then when you leave and you go to use it, it's not really that absorbent? It's basically a towel that is leaving you out to dry. That's why MyPillow has developed the MyPillow towels, towels that actually work. I know, it's totally mind-blowing. Towels that actually dry you. Their 6-piece towel set includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. They come in a variety of colors. I have the sage green and the white. I love them. And right now you can receive a 6-piece set for only $39.98 with promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. So go to mypillow.com right now and click on the radio listeners special. MyPillow products come with a 10-year warranty and have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So to receive this amazing offer on the 6-piece towel set of MyPillow towels, just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special, and enter promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, or call 1-800-564-8475. That's mypillow.com, promo code Jenna.